Hey y'all, it's Robin. I've been sitting on this video and waiting to react to it for about a day and a half now. And not only that, but a third video just dropped too, because Chris Chanland is apparently getting busy once again. But this one is solely going to be about the second video that Chris posted. And as someone who has long followed Christery, whether I want to admit that or not, I wanted to take a little time to just fully absorb this video and everything that Chris Chan said before I threw in my 2 cents. Chris Chan released a second video to YouTube the day after he released the first one that Iris and I reacted to a couple days ago. I'm sure you guys have probably already heard it. Chris came out, basically said that he was the second coming of Christ. Whew, it was a lot to process. There was crazy editing, which obviously was not done by him. There were five Chris Chans on the screen. He talks about the haters and basically blames all the wrongdoing on the sinners and the haters and says that he remembers when he was crucified in quote unquote Nazareth. It was wild. You probably heard how we felt about it. And speaking again for myself, I personally thought that we would see a different side of Chris Chan. I don't know where that hope came from. I am definitely a glass half full type of person, but I thought for sure that Chris would get some sort of assistance or care that he needed and come out maybe at least staying off the internet. The last few months with Chris not really participating or doing much other than kind of quietly gaming and liking some Twitter posts here and there. The second I saw the Facebook page reactivate, I was like, oh no, here we go again. The video was titled Setting the Record Straight. There never was any sex involving me in 2021. And in this 8-minute long video, Chris says a variety of things, but primarily proclaims his innocence from the allegations of incest. And for those allegations, he was jailed for 1 year and 7 months. Chris also goes on to provide more details on Cabbage Patch or Egg or Cabbage Snatch, as I call her. Whatever you want to call her, too, I guess. She's the girl that he's been seen out and around town with since his release. Part of the reason that I'm covering Chris Chan on this podcast is because, yes, crimes absolutely occurred all the way throughout this saga, the grand saga, not even just the mini ones. Whether you believe the incest allegations or not, multiple crimes took place across this entire story. This is a true crime podcast after all. But I'm also covering it because I'm fascinated that he's back out in the world. And the general demographic of this podcast is one that probably, I mean, never in a million years would have encountered Chris Chan online, probably even operated on the Reddit or subreddits or Kiwi Farms or like Encyclopedia Dramatica or really anywhere that talked about Chris or could have exposed them to Chris. And it's bringing me back great, albeit sick joy to get all of you up to speed on the absolute batshittery that this entire story involves. That being said, in the Chris Chan Saga series that I've been putting out, we're on going into episode 15, and you are nowhere close to being up to date on how it ended up with Barb and the allegations and the call. So, for many of you regular listeners, a lot of context is going to be missing here. So, I'm going to do my best to give you all a little mini explainer. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to info at wesaw.thedevil.com. Happy to answer. You can also go to the quickie. But I know it is a lot, and there are a lot of players and people involved in this. So, really quickly, I'm going to go over a little context on how the allegations became public against Chris. Naturally, since this is the Chris Chan saga, we're dealing with some really, truly terrible people, Chris included. There was an evil bitch, Isabella Loretta Janke, and she had a lot of online handles, but TLDR, she ended up doing some work for him, was hired to do some animation work. She quote unquote befriended Chris, and then it just all went downhill from there. From the beginning, she basically set out to be the biggest, worst troll that Chris Chan had ever encountered. Allegations of trying to get him to unalive himself, and you'll come to hate her as much as pretty much everyone else. Side note, if you want to learn about her more, and she is truly a revolting human being, outside of Chris Chan, she's done so much. She is a horrible person. You can look her up on YouTube. She's widely considered to be one of the most evil people in internet pop culture history. Both of her parents worked in the CIA, dad in cybersecurity. She's well connected, came from a very influential family. Legally, she's never been held accountable for anything that she's ever done. But we will go and cover her in depth when we get there in the podcast episodes. She ended up recording the infamous phone call with Chris where he admitted to having sex with Barbara. And in a future episode, when we get there, I will play the actual call. But here's the thing, y'all. And I see a lot of people watching this Chris Chan video and being like, oh, okay, I believe him. Guys, before I even play Chris Chan's video, here's the thing. Can we just have a moment of lucidity and a casual reminder that Chris was giving off signals and signs and clues that he was having sex, possibly with Barb, weeks before this phone call actually took place? Because Chris did. The phone call with Isabella, aka Bella, as everyone knows her as, took place on July 27th, 2021. Now, when this call was leaked on the 30th, that's the first anybody had ever heard of it, right? Publicly speaking. However, it came out that Chris had been dropping clues to other people and discussing it, vaguely discussing it. So we're going to head over to the quickie now. If you're listening to the audio podcast, you are not seeing this, but those of you who are watching this on YouTube are. So on July 5th, a couple weeks before the call with Bella would end up going viral online and be published, Chris reached out to Null, whom I'm sure many of you recognize, know who I'm talking about. Chris said, quote, "Now I also have a major update to share with you, strictly confidential. The past week up to Sunday, the 27th, has been a major game changer for the positive with me. I tell you this in strictest confidence and trust. I do not want word of this on the Kiwi or going public, but I had sex with someone last week, someone of this half of our universe. I worked thoroughly and compassionately with her beforehand and at present. She's physically older than I. If heard, one may say it's something out of an anime or fan fiction. But yeah, keeping her safe as well. Also, next appointment with my doctor is on the 20th, so I'll get checked then to be safe. Condoms are being used in the intercourse. This relationship was something I have extensively given much deep thought and within myself. I had foreseen this among the infinite possible outcomes long ago. I no longer believe in labels that would hinder, and I do not listen to those shadows. This was of my own choice and acceptance, and I have no regrets. This feels right and good with I and her." Null, not knowing what the fuck he's talking about, just thinking, rambling of a madman, or maybe he, hooked up with a MILF, maybe, said, "Really? How'd you meet?" Chris said, "Well, I've met her a while ago and was not fully aware at the time. And my allied deities guided me to seek her out and make things go further with great effort. We have talked off and on during the time in person. Behind a considerate camouflage, she was, but she was honest in her emotions, and she wanted to be with me as well. Mutual feelings on good rapport. The relationship has been, from the start, offline and in person, I assure you." Null said, "Do you have a picture of you and this girl, by the way?" Chris said, "Woof," pressing hard for details. "I do have photos of my lady friend, but I feel it too personal at this time. I did mention she was older than I. She's in the over 50s, and she definitely does not want to be spread around. As one of my more curious followers may have found through my Amazon by now, I even recently purchased a valuable informative book to add guidance." And then there's a picture of the ultimate guide to sex and disability for all of us who live with disabilities, chronic pain, and illness. Null said, "I'm not trying to press, I'm just curious. It's good you're both into things like anime." Chris said, "Actually, she doesn't watch much anime or animated series or even television these days for that matter. Adam West was one of her favorite people back in the 60s, however, as it was for her son back then." Null, still not knowing what the fuck's going on, said, "Well, that's cool. I hope it works out." Chris says it is, smiley face. "I have found great appreciation for her in reading her deeply and in listening to her stories and life adventures. Her high school days were quite fun for her. An intellectual she is, worked a lot in numbers and accounting." Side note, Barbara worked in accounting. "Also, you may note what I have told you of my lady friends so far and in future. I kind of want you to figure it out for yourself, as also the few others I've confided strictly with this detail. Don Lasham and Wildcat are the two others who have additional clues as well. And I've mentioned this to my doctor as well, without mentioning her name directly at all in any event. I will see my doctor on the 20th, so I will get tested to confirm lack of STDs then. She and I have our romps in the sack every 3 nights at the present. It does give her something to look forward to. She is very grateful, and I am also appreciative in being able to enlighten her with sex play she missed out on from even her exes. Noel said, "You should definitely not tell anyone who she is. It'll only complicate the relationship if people start harassing her." Chris said, "Obviously." Noel said, "It's a good sign you kept it secret so far, but don't risk it." Chris said, "Yes, shh. We are safe as long as none of this, even the obscure details, get leaked at all in the public view or on Kiwi." Noel said, "Good idea. I'd honestly advise not even telling people you trust that you have a girlfriend at this point." Chris said, "Not telling anyone else after you, I do promise." That conversation took place before Bella even talked to Chris, and the calls end up getting leaked. And that's just a clip of some of the clues that he gave Null and others. So on July 27th, 2021, Bella and Chris had a call where he ends up admitting to having a sexual relationship with Barb. He says that it is, in fact, his own mother and it is Barbara. 2 days later, on July 29th, a YouTube video of the call involving Chris and Bella was posted on YouTube. The entire internet went insane. It was trending on Twitter like hashtag Chris Chan did what and hashtag Chris Chan and WTF. All of that was trending on Twitter. Not only that, but you can actually find real news clips. The funniest one is on from Fox News, mainstream news networks that actually covered this breaking story. And here's the thing, and here's what makes Bella such a shitty human being. I mean, just one of the many things. After she was aware of that call, like after she knew about that call, Bella had multiple discords that she would use to try to harass people, dox them. She had a couple people in them. Bella did not report the call to police. Instead, she sent it to a friend and had no intention of calling police or reporting it. And that call took place on the 27th. And Chris admitted that he had sex with Barb every 3 days. So, in essence, she likely allowed the abuse to continue. Not only that, but she's on record trying to get this girl who would go on to leak the first call. She tried to keep her from reporting it so that she could get Chris in trouble because Bella's ultimate plan, the big thing was everyone was trying to donate and get Chris to go to the convention BronyCon. He had been to one before. This girl had a crush on Chris. Apparently, Bella's big master plan was to wait and try to secretly videotape Chris Chan and this young girl having sex. That was her supposed plan. She was trying to get as much stuff on Chris as possible, and she said some really heinous things. Now, anyway, the calls end up getting leaked. We will go through in depth what actually transpired in that entire situation later. There was a lot of drama and a lot of fallout, but that's the gist of it. So, this girl ended up leaking the first call, and then it was like dominoes. Not only that, but when the first call was made public, Null actually questioned it. Text messages were leaked as well between Bella and Chris. So on July 30th, Null contacts Chris. "I need you to tell me if this is real or not." Chris replied, "Hey, Josh. Well, this is indeed a major shocker of a leak, but firstly, let me state directly with you that I have told this only to one person outside of the temple. And second, Josh Moon, yes, it is true. The sex was consensual with Barbara. I had told Bella in strictest confidence about this and trust her not to have directly or personally leaked or divulged the story to anyone else." Not relevant to this particular video, but Null would actually end up blocking Chris after Chris was waiting for the mall to open and then admitted to Null that he was taking money out of Barb's account. Null ended up blocking Chris. So the entirety of the internet knew about Chris and Barb. And most people believed that Barb likely had dementia because, I mean, when you start seeing Barb in some of the videos, especially her eyes, how her eyes look, how she's not really coherent a lot of the time, things that Chris says in his call, such as describing how Barb was very quote unquote confused at first. So the call was posted on July 29th, and then 2 days later on July 31st, a YouTuber was tipped off to a motel that Chris was staying at. Chris had videoed, taken some pictures from the second floor of a balcony in a motel, and a YouTuber tracked Chris down. Kind of went on a wild goose chase, but then got tipped off when 4 county sheriff's deputies appeared at a motel, and this YouTuber actually got Chris's perp walk on video. After that, Chris went to jail and there's been limited information. So there is your little explainer of how this went down. Again, super surface. We will cover it way more in depth later in the series when it occurs. But let's talk about the description of Chris Chan's video. Again, the video is called Setting the Record Straight. There was never any sex involving me in 2021. All right, so we're going to listen to the recording.
Hey everyone, Jesus Christy Weston Chandler Sanchi Prime here, and right now I'm gonna set the record straight. So just so y'all know, straightforward and blunt, to the point. The reason I went to jail, the charge I was charged with, I was innocent. There never, ever, 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 ever was any sex between Barbara and I, period. I was innocent. I have a few bullet points to go through anyway. But shoot, I mean, where did we go to end up here? So obviously we got all the haters and fakers and the toxic sinners that tried to manipulate me and so much. I mean, just that was a mess of good grief right there. Why did y'all have to do that? You all really erroneously misunderstood me, period. And just, that was a whole mess up. I mean, shoot, even y'all with your freaking smut fictions, I know some of you out of the minority that are the worst. Out of the majority being actually good, okay? You out of the minority, you've written those smut fictions. You shipped me with Barbara. You shipped me with that Snorlax. And I've seen worse ship. And Barbara was definitely not the perfect mother with me. There was not the perfect mother-daughter relationship there, period. Growing up, there was the times of abuse, even though there was the love and caring in there and throughout. But that was a whole different kettle of fish right there. But yeah, the bullying, the terrorizing, and all that, they really fucked me up. I feel so... Just enough said right there. But hey, you're never gonna make me commit suicide, period. And that was the intention that Bella had in all her chopped and screwed up recordings with all the attention and manipulating me into that. But hey, I foreknew she was going to do that. I tested her. At the time, I treated her like, just as a friend, try to get her to be on the good side. But obviously she failed. Just like I foreknew the relationship between Dylan and Taylor, that was not going to last. He abused her. I gave her support on that live stream when I went on there. Just support and kindness, because I appreciated her as an artist and an individual, which was more than I could say for Dylan at the time. But yeah, Bella was going to actually record me and Fifi having done something at the hotel had I actually made it to BabsCon. But fortunately, that didn't quite happen. She one way or another, she would have got me into jail or tried to get me to commit suicide on the whole different day. But hey, she failed. She didn't do that. I took the initiative in my own hands, so I let divine intervention and timing and everything just let me go to jail, spend my time suffering and spending the time for your sins, you fucking toxic ones. And I meditated and learned everything. I am Jesus Christ reincarnated. I am the one avatar of all existence. And I'm going to see that there is nothing but good and righteousness and light-powered individuals and encouraging all the neutrals to be good. Period. Just like I'm trying to do in this video and statement right now, setting the record straight. But I was proven innocent. And they couldn't place me anywhere, which is why they kept me in jail for so long, because they didn't know what to do with me. They didn't know what to do with somebody was freaking autistic that you weren't putting your words in. Ish. They didn't know what to do. They just kept me in jail. They didn't know where to place me. But fortunately, they did know where to place me eventually, so that happened. I'm safe and doing better, okay? But I did nothing wrong, and only the certain individuals online, they had wrongfully manipulated and controlled me and my own narrative, but no more. I take control of my own narrative from now on, not you. Not you lot of haters and fakers. I am a much better individual than that. Y'all should have known better of me than that. That is enough with the mislabelings and the misconceptions. That's enough. And the whole lot of the set's commentary was me being misled by the suggestion of those individuals, especially those theoretical exes of mine. And I was proven innocent by court of law and released. Simple as that. And also, just putting this out there, just do not be an ableist. I mean, those of you neurotypical, thinking you're able, whatever, there is at least one thing that is totally disabled about you, period. So do not hate others for things that you are yourself, period. There is no need to hate on anyone, or even yourself. A flaw is a flaw, a blessing is a blessing, and a flaw can be a blessing in disguise. So you meditate on that, and stop hating for such a flaw. And I am a living, breathing individual, and I am not to be objectified in any way anymore. But yeah, in that, Bella was the real sex criminal, and that she really wanted to try to get me in something. She's the real criminal. Fucking bitch! Calling her out! Call her out! Isabella Jenkins. She's the real sex criminal, period. She did a whole mess of adulteration and manipulation and things in her own words and attitude and insinuations and everything. Okay? But to end this on a more positive note, so the girl y'all had seen me with in the past few weeks, I'll tell you a little something about her. She's a friend of mine, and I refer to her only as Flutter, because she likes Fluttershy. Okay? I met her in Lynchburg. She got in touch with me while I was in jail. And we managed to meet. We managed to bond and connect with each other as friends. And she is literally 30 years old despite her physicality. But anyway, just pretty much straightforward right there, letting you know about that. And I just felt like I just need to say all that, clear the air. There is nothing wrong with being associated with me, period. I am sick and tired of being blocked by anyone, including and especially by those of whom I appreciate. And I do have friends that do have great appreciation of me, which more than I can say than some. I mean, you all, even Megan Schroeder, had your chance to actually be kind and compassionate and friends with me for a longer run. Because that's enough said right there. I just felt like I need to get that off. Otherwise, I might have had a sleepless night.
All right, so right off the bat, interesting that he pronounces it Jesus. Jesus Christine Weston Chandler Sonichu Prime is the new name that Chris is going by now in full. I assume the Spanish like Jesus that Chris is going for is from his Spanish days in high school when his class name was Ricardo. Who knows at this point? So he's going to set the record straight, right? He says, there never, ever, 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 ever was any sex between Barbara and I, period. I was innocent. And then he says, I have a few bullet points. Quote, so obviously we got all the haters and fakers and the toxic sinners that tried to manipulate me so much. I mean, and then that stress sigh is back. That was a mess of good grief right there. Why did y'all have to do that? You all really erroneously misunderstood me, period. And just that was a whole mess up. And then he starts to blame, especially, I mean, he's already blaming trolls and people and us sinners. But then he tries to blame people and said, well, it's your fault. Quote, even all of y'all with your freaking smut fictions. I know some of you out of the minority that are the worst, out of the majority being actually good. You've written those smut fan fictions. You shipped me with Barbara. You shipped me with that Snorlax, and I've worse shit. Whew. Okay, first of all, let me tell you, I about fell out when he said Snorlax. I was laughing so hard and my hand was on my mouse. I was shaking my desk. I was laughing so hard when he said Snorlax. For some of you who may be unaware, Barb gained the nickname Snorlax pretty early on because she looked like that Pokemon. And so that was kind of Barb's nickname, was Snorlax. So for Chris himself to come out and call Barbara Snorlax, just art imitating life, imitating art, I guess. I don't know. But see, no accountability whatsoever, blaming the trolls and all the other people. He then goes on to say, which I think is interesting, quote, Barbara was definitely not the perfect mother with me, just that was not the most perfect mother-daughter relationship there, period. Because growing up, there was the times of abuse, even though there was the love and caring there throughout. But that was a whole different kettle of fish right there. And then Chris goes right back to blaming all of the trolls. It was the trolls who bullied him. Again, focusing on the trolls. And then Chris says, quote, but yeah, Bella was actually going to record me and Fifi, Fiona, the young autistic woman I spoke about earlier, having done something at the hotel had I actually made it to BabsCon. But fortunately, that didn't quite happen. She, one way or another, would have gotten me to jail or tried to get me to go commit suicide. But hey, she failed. Then he literally pounds his fist on the desk. She didn't do that. I took the initiative in my own hands. So I let divine intervention and timing and everything to send me, just let me go to jail, spend my time suffering and spending the time for your sins, you fucking toxic ones. And then my favorite. Now I meditated and learned everything. I am Jesus Christ reincarnated. I am the one avatar of all existence, and I'm gonna see that there is nothing but good and righteousness and light powered individuals, and encouraging all the neutrals to be good, period. But I was proven innocent, and they couldn't place me anywhere, which is why they kept me in jail for so long. They didn't know what to do with me. They didn't know what to do with somebody who was freaking autistic. They didn't know what to do. They just kept me in jail because they didn't know where to place me. But fortunately, they did know where to place me eventually. So that happened. I'm safe and doing better, okay? But I did nothing wrong, and only the certain individuals online, they had wrongly manipulated and controlled me and my own narrative, but no more. I take control of my own narrative from now on, not you. So Chris says he meditated and learned everything. I assume learned everything from the Bible that he had with him in jail because from what I hear that's the only book that he had there. Interesting that he still brought up the autistic aspect because don't forget in Chris's mind everyone is out to get him because he is autistic. And we don't know what happened to Chris. We don't know what happened to Chris or why he was released. We know absolutely nothing. So anything is just pure speculation at this point. But it's really interesting, and you can kind of see, and I could be completely wrong if I have any listeners who are therapists or psychologists. I feel like some of these are catchwords that therapists may say. You know, take control of your own narrative, Chris. Take control of your own narrative. You're responsible for this. You have the power. You know, in the previous video, the really well edited one that had the 40 Chris Chans flying around the screen, I feel like that entire video was very much scripted by someone else, scripted, shot, and edited. This one, I definitely feel like Chris had a higher, bigger hand in. I feel like we're seeing a lot more Chrisisms talking the way that he normally talks. That being said, he looks completely knocked out on drugs. I don't know if it's Klonopin or what it is, but Chris is slurring his speech, dead eyes, the whole bit, not animated like he used to be. I mean, he's always had very strange eyes, right? Like crazy eyes. Just completely. medicated. He then goes on to say that everyone is being ableist and everyone is a little disabled. Quote, there's at least one thing that's totally disabled about you, period. So do not hate on others for things that you are yourself, period. There is no need to hate on anyone. I mean, sure, yeah, I totally agree with that. But it's really interesting that he keeps coming back to the disability piece of this video. And then he goes on to blame Bella again, which I mean, Bella was an evil piece of shit. I'll give him that. But Chris, you diddled your mom. In the end of the video, Chris says, in that Bella was the real sex criminal in that. She really wanted to try to get me into something. She's a real criminal. Fucking bitch. Calling her out. Call her out. Isabella Jenkin. She is the real sex criminal, period. She did a whole mess of adulteration and manipulation and things in her own words and acts and insinuations and everything. He's starting to go off the chain about Bella, and then he pulls himself back. And then, shocking and unbeknownst and unexpectedly, talks about the woman that people have been talking about nonstop. He starts talking about her. He met her in Lynchburg. He calls her Flutter because she likes Fluttershy from My Little Pony. And she contacted him while he was in jail. And she's 30 years old. So there you have it. We do not have a name on her, but she's apparently 30 years old. Contacted Chris while he was in jail. They ended up meeting in Lynchburg, I assume after Chris got out of jail, and they have been seen together frequently ever since. My personal opinion, which is not worth anything, is that she and Chris are currently living together. I do believe personally in my soul of souls that she is a troll. I think that someone is trying to monetize Chris. Guys, I'm going to go to the Etsy right now looking up Chris Chan. Wasn't even prepared for this. Alrighty, the official Quick Mart, CWC MART. Almost everything is out of stock. If you look, a bag of fucking rocks. It's called Temple of Sonichu Sacred Rocks, like Temple of Sonichu where Chris resides. It is a bag of shitty dollar store crystals with some gravel pebbles thrown in. I saw on someone bought one a while ago and they got a piece of macaroni pasta in it. I almost pissed myself laughing. But yeah, it says it's $15 for this little bag. It looks like something you'd find in a new age store and charging $15 for it. And 15 people have bought this in the last 24 hours alone. Almost everything, so much stuff in the store is sold out. So much stuff is sold out. Um, Basically anything that's under like the $200 range is gone, sold out. Everybody's buying the fucking medallion. The medallion was $35 and sold, 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 sold. Also some of the cheap artwork from Kristen Jail. Guys, this Etsy shop is making so much money. Also, the official Quick Mart has a new picture of Chris on it as well. It has so far 2,666 sales. But I do believe personally that Egg, Flutter, Cabbage Snatch is somehow into a group of people or another person or two who is attempting to piggyback off of Chris being released and monetizing Chris, honestly, trying to piggyback, troll, and monetize and make money off of Chris, which is incredibly sad if that is actually true. I have no idea, but it's crazy how fast the content factory has started. The last thing I want to touch on is at the very, very end of this video, at the tail end of it, one of the very last things Chris says, and I want to read this directly. He says, quote, I mean, you all, even Megan Schroeder, had your chance to actually be kind and compassionate and friends with me for the longer run. Megan fucking Schroeder. All of this time, Chris is still upset at Megan freaking Schroeder and feels like she screwed him over. She dealt with him quite literally trying to molest her. She dealt with him constantly trying to get too close, invade her boundaries, and partially molest her. Here we are in 2023. Chris is out of jail. Chris is just coming back to the internet and includes Megan Schroeder in his denial video that he diddled his possibly dementia addled mother. I don't know what we did to stray so far from God, but like here we are, I guess. That completely took me aback because I feel like Chris has no boundaries. He hasn't had boundaries. He's been inappropriate with every woman he's had any sort of physical contact with or been in the physical proximity of. Then you have the situation with Barb. And now Chris thinks that he is Jesus Christ reincarnated, the second coming of Christ. I don't know how this entire story is going to end, but I don't think it's going to be good. I find it really, really kind of concerning that we are in the Revelation saga where Chris thinks he's some sort of new cult leader. Chris suddenly fancies himself some sort of cult leader. I don't understand it for the life of me, but it's ringing some bells. Ringing some bells and also more red flags than the Soviet parade. But that's it for today, guys. I just wanted to do a really quick video. I know a lot of people who are listening to this series have no idea the context or what transpired, but it is pretty big deal that Chris came out and addressed the elephant in the room or the barb in the room, if you will. And for the podcast listeners, guys, I promise this is not going to be Chris Chan 24/7. It's just that a lot has happened this week. Remember in the past when I covered other cases and then Lori Vallow news would drop and I would drop everything to cover Lori Vallow? Sadly, there's been a lot of Chris Chan content this week. Chris Chan did put out a third video called Angelica Rose Chew's Christmas Play, and it is bizarre. And it's his drawing, and it's about Angelica Rose Chew. It's about 15 minutes long, and it's fucking weird. It's him green screen type of thing. His Chris's like disembodied floating head, and apparently it's going to be a series for the life and times of Jesus Christ. Chris wrote this entire play and animated it while he was in jail, and now we are seeing the series. Apparently, it is a mess. You can watch that one if you want to. I'm not going to be covering it in a YouTube video. But that is it for today, guys. Thank you for listening. Until next crime.